Here we are. It's the first frost and we're out in the collard patch. Look at all the guys, all frosty and toasty. They're gonna be really sweet. We may have to have some collards for dinner tonight. How did we get started on this collard project? Well, it started first with a book. This one, Collard, A Southern Tradition from Seed to Table. And one of the authors of this book, Ed Davis, reached out to me when it was first coming out because I had written a little bit in Mother's News about collards. And I invited him to come to the Heritage Harvest Festival and give a talk about collards. And he told me the story of these, how he and his co-author John Morgan and a USDA plant breeder had spent about 7 years in the 80s and early 90s collecting over 90 different accessions of heirloom collards. And I'm telling you, they have, you can see a little bit of the varieties here. Look at how much yellow there is in the green compared of this yellow cabbage collard versus the Fulton Stroud, which is much more of a blue-green type of a collard. But you still can't see it so much with the, anyway, so I got distracted. I was telling the story of the intrepid trippers who got us going with this collection. Mark Farnham, Ed Davis, and John Morgan. And they would go out and drive around, and where they would see a great big old bunch of collards, they'd go up, knock on the door, and say, "Good afternoon, sir. We notice your lovely collards. Are these ones that you have saved seeds from?" And very often the gardener or farmer would say yes, and they'd invite them in and tell them about the collards, and give them seeds. Like one of the things though that they found out, in addition to the friendliness and hospitality and willingness to share information about seed saving from these collard seed stewards, is that most of them were old. I'm 72, and I am right at about the median age for those seed savers, and many of them had nobody who was going to take on the stewardship of that variety. And so when I got introduced to this collection, I got interested a lot. And it just so happened that I was going to a garden writers event in Charleston where Mark Farnham has his USDA gardens. And lo and behold, he was doing an observational trial of many of the varieties in the Davis Morgan collection. And that got me going. Oh my goodness. And then we started talking about what could we do about all these varieties. So we decided to ask the USDA for seed samples of as many of the Davis Morgan collection as they could get. And they were able to give us seed of 60 of the varieties that they had enough to share. And that first year, Seed Savers Exchange grew out all those varieties, and we grew them out here at Acorn Community Farm. And that is 3 times as many as what we have in the collection that we're showing you today. So there's a lot of collards. And we, looked at them. Look at that. Look at this nice purple one. I like this, Tabitha Dykes. It's beautiful. collards and the book that got us going with it. It's going to be so fun, to remember that first time when I walked up at the USDA and there were like rows and rows of these trials. And it made me feel like we need to make a commitment to regenerating these varieties and making sure that they're available to future generations of gardeners and farmers. And here we have the Heirloom Collard Project. You can look at our website at heirloomcollards.org and see many of the varieties and their beauty and excitement. And you can grow some and you can eat some, and then your commitment will be sealed. Cabbage worm. We were so busy with getting the catalog that we didn't, and it was so late in the season without a frost that we haven't been picking these cabbage worms. But look at that guy eating holes in our collards. Walking here in the Garden of Collards, I realized how many people it took to get us to this point, and we don't want to forget anyone. So I'm going to go back to when I first learned about the Davis Morgan collection and the real diversity there is in heirloom collards. It was back in 2014 when Ed Davis, one of the authors of Collards, A Southern Tradition from Seed to Table, gave a call to Peggy Cornett at Monticello and asking her about collards in Jefferson's day. He was just he and his co-author John Morgan were just finishing up their book, and Peggy said, "You should meet Ira Wallace, who is involved with the Heritage Harvest Festival here at Monticello and is really into collards." Well, lucky for me, Dr. Davis took her up and gave me a call. And we talked about the collection and that he had worked not only with John Morgan, but with Dr. Mark Farnham in South Carolina. And it so happened I was going to go down to Charleston for a garden writers meeting. So I arranged to meet Dr. Farnham, and he was doing a trial of collards, some of which were from the Davis Morgan collection, which might well have been called the Farnham, Davis, and Morgan collection at the and I just saw so much diversity that I felt like we really have to do something and make all of this diversity available to gardeners and seed savers. So I reached out to Tora Johnson at Seed Savers Exchange, and we met a couple of times more at conferences that year, and started to assemble a team of collard enthusiasts. And Tora talked to other folks at Seed Savers Exchange, and they agreed that Seed Savers would reach out to the USDA Gene Bank and see how many of the accessions that were in the Davis Morgan collection we could get. And we also decided to start, I guess, actually, this was after we had met Chris Smith. Well, we knew Chris, but had talked with Chris Smith at So True Seeds, who is now the executive director of the Utopian Seed Project in North Carolina. And we set up a website called heirloomcollards.org. And I guess that was in 2016. Well, just at about the same time, Southern Living was doing a small article about me and the work that I've done here at Southern Exposure Seed Exchange. And they put in just a tiny little sidebar about heirloom collard stewards needed. And one of the things that was kind of exciting about that is there was a group of sorority sisters in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, who reached out to me and offered to steward a variety, and they were interested in a variety that had African American heritage. Yes, about the sorority sisters that saved William Alexander Heading Collard. That was a most amazing coincidence. Lorraine M. Mortiz, who's an attorney in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which is the home of Old Salem, and they have an annual seed swap. And Lorraine saw my call for stewards for collard seeds, and she said in her email, did we have any that had been stewarded by African American gardeners? And I said, well, we'll look at the data and see. And we found one that she found exciting, William Alexander Heading. And so she and her sorority sisters in the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority and their friend, Master Gardener Elmer Kesey, took it upon themselves to regenerate this variety. And it just happened at such a time that Seed Savers Exchange was making a deposit in the global seed bank at Svalbard, and this variety was included. So it's most likely certainly the first documented variety stewarded by an African American gardener to be put in the safety of the global seed bank in the permafrost in Svalbard, Norway. It's really fitting to me that this project spoke to me, and that the first group of seed savers to take on carrying at least one of these varieties further into the future was a group of well-educated, civic-minded African-American women who perhaps were not many of them gardeners by Mr. Kesey's needing to hold their hands, but they were determined women, and this lovely variety has come to us.